Life has a way of slamming doors shut when you least expect it, leaving you stranded on the wrong side of everything you thought was real. For me, that door was the one to my own home, the one I'd shared with my husband Robert for 15 years. The sound of it closing echoed through me like a death knell, a chilling finality. One moment, I was Natasha Coleman, wife, healthcare professional, secure in my world. The next, I was an outcast, staring at 3 packed suitcases on my doorstep, while Robert's gaze, brimming with a disgust I couldn't comprehend, burned through the living room window. It was barely 2 hours before that I'd walked through that same door, tired but content after a long shift at the hospital. Robert's voice had been a shard of ice. "You need to leave right now. I can't even look at you after what you did to Brianna." The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs and freezing my heart. Brianna, his 19-year-old daughter from his first marriage, stood behind him. Her face was streaked with tears, a carefully crafted mask of distress, but behind it, a glint of pure, unadulterated triumph danced in her eyes. She'd been waiting for this. I saw it then, the sick satisfaction she struggled to hide beneath her fake sobs. "Robert, what are you talking about?" My voice was a shaky whisper as my purse and medical bag slipped from my grasp. "What did I do to Brianna?" He spat back. "Don't you dare act innocent. She told me everything. How you've been treating her when I'm not here, the threats you made, the way you tried to turn me against her. I should have listened to her months ago when she first tried to tell me what kind of person you really are." The accusations were a torrent, each word a fresh wound, threats, turning him against her. My mind reeled, frantically sifting through 15 years of shared life, 15 years of unwavering devotion to him and, yes, to Brianna. I had bent over backwards for that girl, always. I cooked her favorite meals, spent countless hours helping with college applications, and defended her to Robert when her teenage rebellions pushed his buttons. I treated her like my own flesh and blood, showering her with the care and patience I imagined a mother would. This, then, was my repayment. This was the gratitude I received. "Robert, please listen to me," I begged, my hand reaching for his arm, a desperate plea for connection, for reason. "Whatever she told you isn't true. You know me. You know I would never hurt anyone, especially not your daughter." He recoiled from my touch as if I were poison, his expression hardening into an impenetrable wall. "She has proof, Natasha. Text messages, recordings, everything. I've been blind to who you really are, but not anymore." My mind raced, trying to grasp the impossible. Proof? Text messages? Recordings? None of it made sense because none of it had ever happened. It was a phantom, a lie woven from thin air. But looking into Robert's eyes, I knew. His mind was made up. The man I had loved and trusted for 15 years had chosen to believe the manufactured lies of his daughter over the woman who had stood by his side through thick and thin, through every joy and every sorrow. The man who had vowed eternal love now looked at me as an enemy. "I want you out of this house tonight," he continued, his voice rising, each word a hammer blow to my heart. "I've already packed your things. Don't contact me. Don't contact Brianna. And don't even think about coming back here until you're ready to admit what you've done and apologize properly." That's when the full, crushing weight of the betrayal hit me. It wasn't just that he believed the lies. He expected me to confess to deeds I hadn't committed, to apologize for crimes I hadn't even conceived. The sheer injustice of it all stole the strength from my legs, and I clutched the doorframe, fighting to stay upright, to not crumble completely. Brianna then stepped forward, a vision of false innocence. She placed a hand on her father's shoulder, a gesture that was designed to look loving, but felt chillingly calculated. "Dad, maybe we should give her a chance to explain herself," she simpered, her voice dripping with a concern that was as thin as tissue paper. "I mean, I don't want to be the reason your marriage ends." The manipulation was so transparent, so audacious, it made my stomach churn. She was positioning herself as the reasonable one, the forgiving victim, the daughter willing to grant the evil stepmother another chance. But I saw the truth in her eyes, cold, hard, victorious. She had planned this moment meticulously, savoring every second of my public destruction. "There's nothing to explain," Robert said, his voice firm, unwavering. "The evidence speaks for itself. Natasha, you have 5 minutes to get your things and leave." I cast my eyes around the home we had built together. The photos on the walls, frozen moments of happiness. The furniture we'd chosen as a team, each piece holding a memory. The kitchen where I had cooked thousands of meals, filled with laughter and the aroma of shared life. All of it being ripped away from me, based on the venomous lies of a spoiled girl who had never truly accepted me as part of her family. "Robert," I pleaded one final time, my voice barely a whisper, a desperate gasp for hope. "Please don't do this. We can work through whatever is wrong. We can get counseling. We can talk to Brianna together and figure out what really happened." He turned his back on me completely, a definitive gesture of dismissal, a wall erected between us. "5 minutes, Natasha, then I'm calling the police." And so, there I stood, adrift in my own driveway, my entire world collapsing around me, while neighbors, drawn by the unfolding drama, peered from behind their curtains, their silent judgments palpable. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, dialing my sister Carmen. She answered on the second ring, her voice laced with an immediate concern. "Tasha, what's wrong?" "Carmen," I choked out, the tears finally bursting forth, hot and unstoppable. "I need help. Robert just kicked me out of the house. Can you come get me?" "What? I'll be right there. Don't move." As I waited for Carmen, I stared at the house that had been my sanctuary, my home for 15 years. Robert's shadow moved past the living room window, and a desperate question clawed at my mind. Did some part of him feel any doubt, any flicker of uncertainty about what he had done? Did he know, deep down, that this was wrong? Or had Brianna's manipulation been so complete, so insidious, that he truly believed I was the monster she had painted me to be? The porch light flickered on, and Robert appeared at the door one last time. For a fleeting moment, a foolish, desperate hope surged within me. Perhaps he had come to his senses. Maybe he would ask me to come back inside, to talk, to unravel this tangled mess like adults. Instead, he threw something at my feet. My house keys landed on the concrete with a sharp metallic clang, a sound that resonated like the final nail being hammered into the coffin of our marriage. "Don't come back," he said simply, his voice devoid of emotion, then closed the door and turned off the porch light, leaving me standing alone, swallowed by the darkness. The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum where laughter and love used to reside. It was then I understood. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. Carmen's apartment had always been my safe haven, a place of warmth and unconditional love. But that night, it felt less like a home and more like a life raft, tossed violently in the middle of a storm-ravaged sea. She had arrived in record time, her face a mask of worry, and helped me load my 3 meager suitcases into her car. The drive to her place was a blur, punctuated by her quiet reassurances and my own choked sobs. She knew not to press for details, offering comfort through her presence. Now we sat at her kitchen table, the only sound the soft hum of the coffee maker. Her hands, usually steady, trembled almost as much as mine as she poured 2 steaming mugs. "Tell me everything," she urged, settling into the chair opposite me, her eyes kind but firm. "Start from the beginning." I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic, trying to anchor myself, to find a starting point in the chaotic wreckage of my memories. Where did the beginning actually start? Was it when Robert and I got married, 15 blissful years ago? Was it when Brianna first moved in with us full-time 3 years ago, a sullen teenager still reeling from her mother's new marriage? Or was it months ago, when I first noticed the subtle shift in her gaze, the way her eyes would harden when her father wasn't watching, a flicker of something calculating and cold? "I think it started about 6 months ago," I said slowly, piecing together the fragments. "Brianna began acting different, more distant, more hostile. Little things at first. She'd forget to tell me about school events parents were supposed to attend, knowing I'd feel guilty for missing them. She'd eat the leftovers I had specifically planned for dinner, and then act innocent, wide-eyed and apologetic when I mentioned it. Carmen frowned, her brow furrowing with concern. "That doesn't sound like grounds for kicking you out of your own house, Tasha. That sounds like typical teenage boundary testing, maybe a bit disrespectful, but certainly not warranting this." "It got worse," I continued, the memories painful, each one a fresh sting. She started contradicting everything I said to Robert. If I mentioned she came home late, she would swear she had texted me about it, even if my phone showed no record. If I said she hadn't done her chores, she would insist she had, and that I was just trying to make her look bad, to make her seem incompetent. I forced myself to recall each incident, the slow, insidious erosion of my credibility. There was the time I found marijuana in her backpack, a small, shocking discovery. When I confronted her, quietly, hoping to keep it between us, she had immediately burst into tears, running to Robert and claiming I had planted it there to frame her, to punish her. Robert hadn't fully believed that particular accusation, but I could see it, the tiny seed of doubt planted deep in his eyes, slowly taking root. Then there was the incident with her college fund. Robert had set aside a substantial sum for Brianna's education, and I, in my earnest desire to be helpful and responsible, had suggested we move it to a higher-yield savings account to maximize its growth. Brianna, with a masterful twist of narrative, somehow spun this into a story about me trying to steal her inheritance, to cheat her out of her future. Again, Robert didn't fully buy it, not completely, but the seed of suspicion, once sown, had continued to sprout. He'd begun to see me through a different lens, one clouded by his daughter's carefully constructed fictions. "She's been playing the long game," I said, the horrifying realization hitting me like a physical blow, a sudden, brutal clarity. Every lie, every subtle manipulation, every petty contradiction, it was all building up to tonight. She wanted me gone, and she planned every step of my expulsion. Carmen reached across the table, squeezing my hand, her touch grounding me. "What exactly did she accuse you of, Tasha? What kind of proof did she claim to have?" That was the part that confused me most, the gaping hole in the fabric of their fabricated reality. Robert mentioned text messages and recordings, but I have no idea what he was talking about. I never sent threatening texts to anyone. I certainly never said anything that could be recorded and used against me. I paused, a chilling thought taking hold. Could she have faked something? I don't know, Carmen mused, her gaze distant, analytical. Maybe. She's always been really good with technology, hasn't she? Remember that summer she spent coding for a camp? I thought about all the times I had seen Brianna on her phone, fingers flying across the screen with an almost unnatural speed, lost in the digital world. She could have easily created fake screenshots of text conversations, crafting them to look utterly authentic, complete with timestamps and delivery notifications. And with all these new apps that can change your voice or create entirely fake audio, who knew what kind of sophisticated recording she might have made? The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. The digital age, a blessing for communication, but a curse for those targeted by malicious lies. Carmen was quiet for a long moment, processing everything I had poured out, her mind clearly working through the implications. Finally, she spoke, her voice laced with a steeliness I hadn't heard before. "Tasha, you know you can stay here as long as you need to, as long as you want. This is your home now, but you can't let this stand. If she's fabricated evidence against you, that's not just marriage problems. That's fraud. That could be criminal." The thought hadn't occurred to me, lost as I was in the emotional maelstrom of my personal betrayal. But she was right. If Brianna had created fake evidence to destroy my marriage and reputation, she had committed serious crimes, acts of malice with potentially legal consequences far beyond a broken family. The question was whether I could prove it, and more agonizingly, whether Robert would ever believe the truth once it came out. My heart ached for the Robert I thought I knew, the man who valued honesty above all else. "I keep thinking he'll come to his senses," I said, clinging to a fading hope. "We've been married for 15 years, Carmen. He knows who I am. He knows I'm not capable of the things she's accusing me of. He's seen me through challenges, seen my character shine through. How could he just forget all that?" But even as I spoke the words, a vivid, painful memory flashed through my mind. The look in Robert's eyes when he threw my keys at my feet, the cold, resolute dismissal. That wasn't the look of a man having doubts, wrestling with uncertainty. That was the look of a man who truly, irrevocably believed his wife was his enemy, a manipulator, a monster. It was a conviction that pierced me to my core, a belief that cut deeper than any knife. My phone buzzed on the table, startling me. For a moment, my heart leaped with a foolish hope. Maybe Robert had realized his mistake. Maybe he was calling to apologize, to ask me to come home, to talk, to fix things. The fantasy was fleeting, crushed by the reality of the incoming message. It was a text from my friend Monica at work. "Girl, what is going on? Brianna just posted on social media about you being a toxic stepmother and how she's finally free from your abuse. This is all over Facebook." My blood ran cold, turning to ice in my veins. Not only had Brianna destroyed my marriage in the privacy of our home, but now she was systematically demolishing my reputation, publicly, for the world to see and judge. I quickly opened Facebook on my phone, my fingers fumbling with a sudden dread, and there it was, the post Monica was talking about. Brianna had crafted a long, emotional message, a theatrical narrative about living in fear of her stepmother's supposed verbal and emotional abuse. She painted herself as a long-suffering victim, finally rescued. She thanked her father for at last believing her, for protecting her from my fictional cruelty. The post already had dozens of likes and comments, a cruel chorus of people I knew expressing their shock, their outrage, their fervent support for Brianna. "She's not wasting any time," Carmen observed, reading over my shoulder, her voice tight with anger. "She wants to control the narrative before you even have a chance to tell your side. This is calculated, Tasha. This is malicious." I scrolled through the comments, my heart sinking lower with each one. People I had considered friends, colleagues, acquaintances, they were all there, expressing their disgust and disappointment in me, a woman they barely knew outside of polite social interactions. Some were even sharing their own stories, claiming to have recognized the signs of abuse in me, projecting their own biases onto Brianna's carefully constructed fiction. The lies were spreading like wildfire, consuming my good name, and I felt utterly powerless to stop them, trapped in a digital maelstrom of condemnation. "Carmen, what am I going to do?" I asked, my voice raw, the helplessness overwhelming me. "How do I fight this? How do I prove my innocence when everyone has already decided I'm guilty?" She was quiet for a moment, then stood up, pacing the small kitchen with a determined energy. "First, you document everything. Every lie she's told, every incident you can remember, however small. Write it all down with dates and times. It doesn't matter how trivial it seems now. Patterns matter. Then you get a lawyer, a good one." The practical advice was a splash of cold water, jarring me back to a harsh reality. "I can't afford a good lawyer, Carmen. All my money is tied up in joint accounts with Robert. I have no access to anything significant without his consent." "Then you get whatever lawyer you can afford, and you fight this properly, Tasha," she insisted, her gaze unwavering. "This isn't just about your marriage anymore. This girl has committed defamation at minimum. She's destroying your reputation and your livelihood. You can't just let that slide. This isn't just a breakup, it's an attack, and you need to respond." As if on cue, my phone rang again. It was Dr. Peterson, my supervisor at the hospital. His name on the caller ID sent a fresh jolt of dread through me. "Natasha, I'm sorry to bother you at home," he began, his voice unusually formal, clipped. "But we've received some concerning information about a situation in your personal life. I think we need to have a meeting first thing Monday morning." My career. Brianna was going after my career now, too. In healthcare, reputation is everything. Patient trust is paramount. Even unfounded accusations of abuse, especially in my line of work, could end my ability to work with vulnerable patients, to practice the profession I loved and had dedicated my life to. "Dr. Peterson, I can explain," I began, my voice desperate, trying to find the words, to defend myself against unseen accusations. "We'll discuss it Monday," he interrupted, his tone unyielding. "For now, I think it's best if you take a few personal days, until this blows over." The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone in disbelief. In one evening, in the span of a few gut-wrenching hours, I had lost my home, my husband, and now, potentially, my career. Brianna's revenge, her calculated campaign of destruction, was more thorough, more devastating than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about making Robert believe her. It was about erasing me. Carmen sat back down and took my hands in hers, her warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread spreading through me. "Listen to me, sister. You are going to get through this. You are going to fight back, and you are going to win. But first, you need to stop hoping that Robert will save you. He made his choice tonight. He threw you out. Now you need to make yours." She was right. The Robert I had loved and trusted for 15 years was gone, replaced by a stranger, a man who could throw away a decade and a half of shared life based on his daughter's flimsy, self-serving lies. It was time to stop being the victim. It was time to start being my own hero, my own advocate, my own protector. The thought was terrifying, but also, surprisingly, empowering. Monday morning arrived with a brutal swiftness, but I was ready. The weekend had been a blur of frantic activity at Carmen's apartment. Fueled by coffee and an adrenaline-fueled resolve, I had documented every single incident I could remember with Brianna, from the petty slights to the more serious accusations. I'd created timelines, gathered whatever tangential evidence I could think of, preparing for what I knew would be the fight of my life. The meeting with Dr. Peterson was scheduled for 8 a.m. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my most professional outfit, a shield of composure, carrying a meticulously organized folder of notes. Dr. Peterson's office felt different than it ever had before. The same diplomas hung on the walls, proud testaments to his achievements. The same family photo, a static image of domestic bliss, sat on his desk. But the atmosphere was cold, stiff, unwelcoming. It felt less like a colleague's office and more like a courtroom. He gestured for me to sit across from his desk, and I could see the discomfort on his face, a mix of professional obligation and personal unease. "Natasha, this is a difficult conversation for both of us," he began, his voice flat, devoid of the usual warmth. "I've received several phone calls over the weekend from concerned parties who saw social media posts about allegations involving you and domestic abuse. The board is also aware." "Dr. Peterson, those allegations are completely false," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands beneath the desk. "I'm the victim of a malicious campaign of lies designed to destroy my reputation and my marriage. Brianna Coleman is a disturbed young woman, and she has fabricated every single one of these claims." He held up a hand, stopping me before I could elaborate further. "I want to be clear that the hospital is not taking a position on the truth or falsehood of these claims, Natasha. We operate under a different set of rules. However, we have to consider the immediate impact on our patients and staff. Many of our patients are vulnerable individuals who have experienced trauma. If there's even a possibility that these allegations, however unsubstantiated, could affect their care or make them uncomfortable, we have an obligation to act. Our primary concern must always be the well-being and trust of those we serve." The injustice of it burned in my chest, a hot, searing fire. So, I was to be punished for accusations that hadn't been investigated, hadn't been proven, hadn't even been given a fair hearing. I was being tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, and my employer, understandably, was reacting to the noise. "You're being placed on administrative leave," he continued, his gaze unwavering, "pending a full review of the situation. If these allegations are proven false, you'll be reinstated with full back pay, of course. But until then, we can't risk the liability. Our reputation, like yours, is at stake." Administrative leave, the professional equivalent of being kicked out of my house. I was being cast aside by everyone I had trusted, everyone I had dedicated my life to, all because of Brianna's cunning, venomous lies. It was a complete unraveling, a dismantling of my entire identity, piece by agonizing piece. "How long will this review take?" I asked, my voice tight, straining for control. "That depends on several factors," he replied, shuffling some papers on his desk. "If criminal charges are filed against you, we'll have to wait for the legal process to conclude. If not, we'll conduct our own internal investigation. But the legal process often takes precedence." Criminal charges. The words hit me like a physical punch to the gut, stealing my breath. Could Brianna actually file false police reports against me? Would she go that far, escalate her malice to that extreme? The thought was terrifying, a leap into a darker, more dangerous abyss than I had yet imagined. I left the hospital feeling numb, disconnected from my own body, watching my life unfold as if from a distance. In less than 72 hours, I had lost my home, my husband, and my job. My entire existence had been wiped clean, leaving only a void. I sat in my car in the parking lot, the familiar hum of the engine offering no comfort, and called the only lawyer I could afford, Janet Torres. She was a no-nonsense attorney who handled everything from divorces to traffic tickets out of a small, unpretentious office downtown. She was known for her tenacity and her willingness to fight for the underdog. "Mrs. Coleman, I've been expecting your call," she said when her secretary put me through, her voice direct and unembellished. "I saw the social media posts over the weekend. Can you be here at noon?" Janet's office was nothing like the fancy law firms you see on TV, with their gleaming glass towers and polished mahogany. It was practical, cluttered, filled with the scent of old paper and fresh coffee. But she was sharp, experienced, and possessed a keen, analytical mind. She listened carefully as I recounted every agonizing detail, taking notes, her pen scratching furiously across her pad. She asked pointed questions about dates, about potential witnesses, about every scrap of information I could dredge up. When I finished, the silence in the room was heavy, punctuated only by her rhythmic tapping of the pen. "This is a complex situation, Mrs. Coleman," she said, finally looking up, her gaze piercing. "We have potential defamation issues, possible fabricated evidence, and now employment problems stemming from false allegations. It's a hydra-headed monster. But before we can address any of that, we need to deal with the immediate threat." "What immediate threat?" My stomach clenched, anticipating yet another blow. "Mrs. Coleman, I've handled enough of these cases to recognize the pattern. This young woman, Brianna, has carefully planned your destruction, and she's not going to stop with what she's already accomplished. I suspect she's building up to filing a police report against you, possibly claiming physical assault or stalking. These things often escalate once a perpetrator feels they have momentum." The thought made me feel physically sick. "But I've never laid a hand on her, Janet. I've never stalked anyone in my life. That's absolutely preposterous." "That doesn't matter if she can fabricate evidence, Natasha. A fake text message threatening her, a staged photo of damage to her property, even a friend willing to lie and say they witnessed something. Once criminal charges are filed, your life becomes infinitely more complicated, far beyond the realm of civil disputes or workplace investigations. The stakes rise dramatically." Janet was right, and I knew it. Brianna had already shown she was willing to lie, to manipulate, to destroy my marriage and reputation. Why would she stop now, when her plan was working so perfectly, when she was riding a wave of public sympathy and her father's unquestioning belief? The answer was chilling. She wouldn't. She would go as far as she could, as far as she dared. "What do I do?" I asked, my voice small, desperate for a lifeline. "First," Janet said, her voice firm, decisive, "you file for divorce immediately. Don't wait for Robert to come to his senses or try to work things out. He made his choice, Mrs. Coleman, and now you need to protect yourself legally. Don't waste another moment hoping for a reconciliation that is based on his realization of truth. It's too late for that. Second, we meticulously document everything and prepare for the very real possibility of criminal charges. We build your defense preemptively. Third, we consider filing our own lawsuit for defamation, an intentional infliction of emotional distress. We hit back and we hit hard. Divorce. The word felt foreign, bitter in my mouth, but Janet's logic was unassailable. There was no going back from what had happened. Robert had chosen his daughter over his wife, over 15 years of shared life. I needed to accept that brutal reality and act accordingly. "I'll prepare the divorce papers today," I said, my voice gaining a new resolve, a newfound strength. "What about trying to prove the evidence against me is fake?" "That's going to be challenging without access to the original files, Natasha. If she created fake text message screenshots, we would need to examine her phone forensically to prove it. Same with any alleged recordings. And since she's not going to voluntarily hand over her devices, we would need a court order, which means we need grounds for a lawsuit. It's a catch-22 situation, isn't it? You need proof to file a lawsuit, but you need a lawsuit to get access to the proof." She paused, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "There is one option. If she files criminal charges against you, discovery in that case could give us access to the evidence. Of course, that means you'd be facing criminal charges while we try to prove your innocence. It's a high-stakes gamble." I left Janet's office feeling more overwhelmed than ever, yet paradoxically, a strange sense of clarity had begun to settle over me. Every option seemed to involve more risk, more pain, more exposure, But it also meant fighting, taking back control, refusing to be a passive victim. As I drove back to Carmen's apartment, my phone started buzzing with notifications, a relentless assault on my already frayed nerves. I pulled over to check them, hoping, against all logic, that it might be good news for once. Instead, I found that Brianna had posted another update on social media. This one was even more detailed, more elaborate than the first, weaving an even more intricate web of lies. She was now claiming that I had threatened to have her father's custody rights revoked if she ever told anyone about my abuse. She accused me of isolating her from her friends and controlling every aspect of her life when she lived with us, painting a picture of a sinister, controlling stepmother. The comments were even worse than before, a venomous echo chamber. People were sharing the posts widely, adding their own outraged commentary about what a monster I supposedly was. Some were even calling for the hospital to fire me permanently, to revoke my professional license. My reputation was being destroyed in real time, in a public square, and there seemed to be nothing I could do to stop it. No way to claw back the narrative from the clutches of her cunning falsehoods. I was so focused on my phone, consumed by the digital assault, that I almost didn't see Robert's car pulling up beside me at the red light. When I looked over, he was staring at me, his expression unreadable, a blank canvas where I used to see love, concern, familiarity. For a moment I thought about rolling down my window, trying one more time to reason with him, to break through the wall of his delusion. Then the light turned green, and he drove away without acknowledging me at all, without a glance, without a nod, as if I were a stranger, an inconsequential passerby. That was the precise moment I knew, with absolute chilling certainty, that my marriage was irrevocably over. The man I had loved for 15 years, the man who had shared my bed, my dreams, my very life, had looked right through me. Perhaps, I thought, a bitter truth settling in, I had been a stranger to him all along, or at least a stranger to the depth of his trust, the superficiality of his commitment. The law office of Torres and Associates was busier than I expected for a Tuesday morning, a hive of activity and legal battles. Janet had squeezed me in between other appointments, and I could hear voices from the conference room next door, where she was handling what sounded like a contentious custody case, the emotional stakes palpable even through the wall. The parallels weren't lost on me, families being torn apart, children being used as weapons, lives being destroyed by people who claimed, in their own twisted way, to love each other. The irony was a sharp, bitter taste in my mouth. "I've drafted your divorce petition," Janet said, sliding a thick folder across her desk, the words stark and clinical, a definitive end to a chapter of my life. "I'm asking for temporary spousal support, your fair share of marital assets, and exclusive use of the marital home until the property division is finalized. We're protecting your interests, Natasha." I stared at the legal documents that would officially end my 15-year marriage. The language was cold and formal, reducing years of love, partnership, and shared dreams to a sterile list of assets and obligations. It felt surreal, like reading a stranger's obituary. "Robert's not going to like this," I said, my voice barely a whisper, the residual conditioning of 15 years of marriage making me consider his feelings even in this moment of profound betrayal. "Robert's opinion isn't relevant anymore, Natasha," Janet replied firmly, her eyes sharp, cutting through my hesitation. "He forfeited the right to a friendly divorce when he threw you out of your house based on lies. Now, we protect your interests first and worry about his feelings never. This is not about being vindictive, it's about justice and self-preservation." She was right, of course. Rationally, I knew she was right. But it still felt profoundly strange to think of Robert as an adversary instead of a partner, a stranger against whom I needed legal protection. I signed the papers, my hand steady, a new resolve hardening my spirit. Janet promised to have them filed and served by the end of the week. "Now, let's talk about building your defense against Brianna's allegations," she continued, her focus shifting, her legal mind already several steps ahead. "I've been thinking about this case all night, and I have some ideas. We're not just reacting anymore, we're strategizing." Janet pulled out a legal pad covered with her meticulous notes, a web of interconnected thoughts and possibilities. "First, we need to establish a pattern of deceptive behavior on Brianna's part. You mentioned several incidents over the past few months where she lied or manipulated situations. Do you have any documentation of these incidents? Any journals, any dates, any details, however small? I thought back through the months of increasingly strange behavior, the slow, unsettling creep of her malice. I started keeping a journal about 3 months ago, I said, a faint glimmer of satisfaction. When things got really bad, when I couldn't make sense of her shifting stories, I wrote down dates and details of the worst incidents, hoping to find a pattern, to understand what was happening. Good, excellent. What about witnesses? Anyone who might have seen her lying or manipulating situations, however subtly? Carmen was there for a few incidents when she visited, I offered, and Monica from work met Brianna a couple of times and commented that she seemed off, not quite right. I paused, remembering something important, a detail that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now held potential weight. Actually, there was an incident at the grocery store about 2 months ago. Brianna claimed I had screamed at her in public, made a scene, but the cashier, who knew me, made a point of telling me later that she hadn't heard any shouting at all, just normal conversation. Janet made notes as I talked, her pen flying across the page. We need to contact these witnesses as soon as possible, Natasha. Memory fades and people move on. The longer we wait, the less reliable their testimony becomes. We need fresh recollections, untainted by time. What about the supposed evidence she has? I asked, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over me. The text messages and recordings Robert mentioned? That's where things get interesting, Janet said, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips, a hint of professional satisfaction. I've been researching the technology involved in creating fake evidence, and it's easier than most people think, frighteningly so. In this digital age, truth is increasingly malleable. She pulled out her phone and showed me several examples, the implications chilling. There are apps that can generate fake text message screenshots, software that can alter voice recordings with uncanny precision, and programs that can create entirely fabricated conversations. Look at this. She showed me a simulated text conversation, complete with my name and number, perfectly timed and worded to appear completely genuine. I created a fake text conversation between you and me in about 5 minutes. If I showed this to your husband without context, he might believe we've been planning your defense for weeks instead of days. The fake conversation looked terrifyingly authentic. Every detail was perfect, from the font to the timestamps to the delivery indicators. It was clear. If someone wanted to frame me, they would have all the tools they needed at their fingertips, easily accessible, expertly crafted. The ease of deception was horrifying. The problem, of course, Janet continued, her expression turning serious, is proving these items are fake. We would need access to the original devices and the technical expertise to analyze the files, to find the digital fingerprints of manipulation. Both of those things cost money, substantial money, that we don't have right now. This is a battle of resources as much as truth. Money. Everything came back to money. The joint accounts I couldn't access, the legal fees I couldn't afford, the expert witnesses I couldn't hire. Brianna had chosen her timing perfectly, striking when I was most vulnerable financially, when my resources were locked away behind the impenetrable wall of a husband who wouldn't trust me. It was a calculated blow, not just emotional but strategic. There might be another way, Janet said, her eyes glinting with renewed determination. If she's been creating fake evidence, she's had to research how to do it. People don't just know how to fabricate text messages and audio recordings off the top of their heads. She would have searched for tutorials, maybe downloaded apps or software, possibly even practiced with test files. There's a digital footprint to nearly everything we do online. You think there might be a digital trail? I asked, a fragile tendril of hope unfurling in my chest. Exactly. Browser history, app downloads, deleted files, even metadata that reveals when and how a file was created or modified. If we could get access to her devices through a court order, we might find evidence of the evidence fabrication itself. It's like finding the blueprint to her lies. It was the first truly hopeful thing I had heard in days, a beacon in the suffocating darkness. How do we get a court order for her devices? We file a lawsuit for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, Janet explained, her hand already moving, sketching out the legal strategy. Then we request discovery, including access to her electronic devices. It's a long shot, a difficult and expensive process, But if we can prove she's been systematically creating false evidence to destroy your reputation, we have a strong case. A very strong case. Janet was already sketching out a legal strategy, her mind racing, when my phone rang again, pulling me sharply from the nascent hope. It was Dr. Peterson from the hospital. A fresh wave of dread washed over me. "Natasha," his voice was even more strained now, formal. "I'm calling to inform you that we've received a formal complaint about your conduct from Brianna Coleman. She's alleging that you used your position at the hospital to access her medical records without authorization." My heart stopped, a sickening lurch in my chest. "That's completely false, Dr. Peterson. I've never accessed her medical records. I wouldn't even know how to do that for someone who isn't my patient. That would be a gross violation of ethics and law." The complaint includes screenshots of what appear to be unauthorized access logs from our computer system, he continued, his voice devoid of judgment but heavy with seriousness, showing your login credentials being used to view her records last month. The evidence on its face appears quite damning. Fabricated evidence. Just like Janet had predicted, Brianna was escalating her campaign, moving from social defamation to potentially career-ending, legally actionable claims. Now she was going after my professional license, my very ability to practice medicine, as well as my reputation. This wasn't just malicious, it was predatory. "Dr. Peterson, I need you to investigate those logs immediately," I insisted, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. "I suspect they've been altered or fabricated. Check the original server records, not just screenshots. There will be an audit trail. A forensic analysis will reveal the truth." "We'll look into it, of course," he replied, his tone remaining neutral, professional. "But I have to inform you that this type of allegation is very serious. If proven true, it could result in immediate termination and referral to the state licensing board. You understand the gravity of this." After I hung up, Janet was already taking notes, her face grim. "She's moving faster than I expected, Natasha. This suggests she's either very confident in her fabricated evidence or she's worried that the truth is about to come out. There's a desperation behind this escalation." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. She successfully destroyed your marriage and got you kicked out of your house. She could have stopped there, enjoyed her victory, reveled in her perceived freedom. Instead, she's escalating to criminal allegations and professional misconduct. That tells me she's either a sociopath who enjoys destroying people for sport, or she's afraid that someone somewhere is going to figure out what she's really done. And that fear is making her reckless. The possibility that Brianna might be feeling pressure, that her carefully constructed world of lies might be starting to crack, gave me the first sense of hope I had felt since this nightmare began. Maybe she wasn't as in control as she appeared to be. Maybe her reign of terror was nearing its end. "Janet," I said, my voice resolute, "I want to file that lawsuit today if possible. The defamation and emotional distress one. We need to go on the offensive." She met my gaze, her expression softening, a hint of admiration in her eyes. "It's going to be expensive, Natasha, and there's no guarantee we'll win. It's a long, uphill battle. Are you sure you're ready for this fight? You could lose more than just money." I thought about everything I had lost in the past week. My home, my marriage, my job, my reputation. I thought about the lies being spread about me on social media, the hateful comments, the friends who had turned their backs on me without even hearing my side of the story. I thought about the profound unfairness, the brutal injustice. "I'm not just ready," I said, a fire igniting within me, a steely resolve settling in my soul. "I'm done being the victim. It's time to fight back. It's time to reclaim my life." 3 weeks after Janet filed the defamation lawsuit, the first significant crack in Brianna's meticulously crafted story appeared. I was staying at Carmen's apartment, trying to adjust to my new, uncertain reality of unemployment and impending divorce, wrestling with the phantom limbs of a life that no longer existed. My phone rang, and it was Monica, my friend from work. Her voice, usually calm, was tight with excitement, making my heart race with a surge of anxious hope. "Tasha, you need to get down to the hospital right now," she practically shouted into the phone. "Security just found something in the parking lot footage that you need to see. It's huge." I had been banned from hospital property pending their internal investigation, but Janet assured me she could accompany me as my legal representative, asserting my right to be present. We met Monica in the security office, where Frank Morrison, the stoic head of security, was waiting, a grim, apologetic expression on his face. "Mrs. Coleman, I owe you an apology," Frank said, gesturing for us to sit, his voice heavy with sincerity. "We've been investigating the alleged unauthorized access to Brianna Coleman's medical records, and what we found is very disturbing. It contradicts everything we were led to believe." He turned his computer monitor toward us, displaying security footage from the hospital parking lot, a grid of surveillance angles. "This is from the day in question," he explained, pointing to a timestamp. "The day those access logs show your credentials being used to view her records." The footage showed me walking to my car after my shift, getting in, and driving away. The timestamp clearly read 3:47 p.m. "Now look at this," Frank said, pulling up another screen, displaying a series of server logs, cold, hard data. These are the server logs showing precisely when someone accessed Brianna Coleman's records using your login credentials. The timestamp on that screen showed 4:23 p.m., a full 36 minutes after I had left the hospital property. "It's impossible for you to have accessed those records, Mrs. Coleman," Frank continued, his voice now laced with a quiet fury at the deception. "You were already gone. Someone else used your credentials to make those queries, then created fake screenshots to make it look like you had done it. This was a deliberate frame-up." Janet leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in, her eyes alight with a fierce satisfaction. "Do you have any idea who might have had access to Mrs. Coleman's login credentials, Frank? This implies a deep breach of security and a very deliberate one." Frank pulled out a file folder, its contents hinting at further revelations. "That's where this gets really interesting. We've been reviewing all the security footage and access logs for the past 3 months, looking for anything unusual, any anomalies, any patterns. Watch this." The new footage showed Brianna entering the hospital lobby about 2 weeks before the alleged unauthorized access. I remembered that day distinctly. She had come to surprise me at work, claiming she wanted to apologize for some of our recent tensions and take me to lunch, a saccharine attempt at reconciliation that now, in retrospect, felt like a scouting mission. "She spent 45 minutes in the building that day," Frank said, narrating the footage. "Most of that time was in areas where she shouldn't have been, including lingering near the computer station where you typically log in, and even entering your office when it was briefly unattended. We believe she used that opportunity to either steal your login information or install something that would capture it. The implications were staggering, sickening. Brianna had come to my workplace under the guise of an olive branch, gained access to my computer, and somehow obtained my login credentials. Then she had used those credentials later to access her own medical records and create fake evidence that I had violated patient privacy laws, a grave ethical and legal offense. It was a calculated, premeditated attack, not a spontaneous act of anger. "There's more," Monica said, pulling out her own folder, her face pale with a mix of anger and vindication. "I've been doing some investigating of my own. Remember how Brianna always seemed to know things about your work schedule that you hadn't told her? Things that were internal to the hospital? She showed us printouts of internal hospital communications, a chilling paper trail. Someone has been accessing the staff portal using your credentials for months, Tasha. Reading your emails, checking your schedule, even viewing personnel information about other employees. She wasn't just guessing, she was spying. The violation felt deeply personal, a cold invasion of my professional space, my privacy. For months, Brianna had been spying on my professional life, systematically learning my routines, my habits, gathering information she could use against me. The supposed unauthorized access of her medical records was just the latest, most egregious act in a long, ongoing campaign of identity theft and privacy violations. This was not just about a stepdaughter's resentment, it was about criminal intent. "We're turning all of this over to the police immediately," Frank said, his voice hard, righteous anger simmering beneath his professional composure. "What she did constitutes computer fraud, identity theft, and probably several other charges. This is a serious felony, and we have irrefutable proof. Dr. Peterson wants to see you in his office immediately, Natasha, to discuss your full reinstatement and a formal apology." As we walked through the hospital corridors, a place I hadn't been allowed to enter for weeks, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and a simmering, righteous anger. The truth was finally coming out, a slow, painful crawl into the light. But the damage to my life had already been done. My marriage was still over. My reputation, though beginning to heal, was still scarred. And Robert, my husband, had still chosen to believe his daughter's insidious lies over 15 years of my unwavering love and loyalty. That wound, I realized, would take far longer to heal. Dr. Peterson's apology was sincere, delivered with a grave formality, but it felt hollow, echoing in the cavern of my broken trust. Natasha, I want you to know that the hospital administration deeply regrets how this situation was handled. We should have conducted a proper investigation before taking any action against you. We let public opinion and initial accusations sway our judgment, and for that I am truly sorry. You are a valued member of our team. I understand you were trying to protect patients and the hospital's reputation, I said, though part of me wanted to scream about the injustice of it all, to rail against the hasty judgment. It's a difficult position to be in. What happens now? Janet asked, ever the pragmatist, ensuring all bases were covered. You're reinstated immediately, Natasha, with full back pay for the entire time you were suspended, Dr. Peterson confirmed. We're also prepared to provide a formal letter of reference documenting that all allegations against you were proven entirely false, in case you need it for any legal proceedings or simply for your own peace of mind. We will do everything we can to restore your professional standing. Janet was already thinking ahead, a strategy forming in her mind. We'll need copies of all the security footage, the server logs, the internal communications. This evidence is crucial, absolutely crucial, for our defamation case against Brianna. It transforms our position from defensive to offensive. After leaving the hospital, I felt emotionally drained despite the vindication. The truth was emerging, a small victory, but it felt like too little, too late to undo the profound upheaval in my life. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with notifications, a barrage of digital noise. I finally checked it, my finger hovering over the screen. Carmen had already shared the news about the hospital's findings on social media, along with a strongly worded post about the dangers of believing accusations without evidence, a powerful counter-narrative to Brianna's lies. Several of my co-workers had added their own comments, supporting me, expressing regret for doubting my character, a slow tide turning in my favor. But the most surprising message was from Robert's sister, Linda. We had always gotten along well, sharing confidences and family jokes, but she had been conspicuously silent since the accusations began, a silence that had hurt deeply. Natasha, I need to talk to you. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? There are things about Brianna you need to know. Things I should have said sooner. I showed the message to Janet, who raised an eyebrow, a flicker of interest in her eyes. This could be very helpful for our case, Natasha. Family members often see things that others miss or are privy to information that an outsider wouldn't get. It could be valuable corroboration. The next morning, I met Linda at a small cafe downtown, far from our usual neighborhood, the familiar haunts where I might run into Robert or, God forbid, Brianna. She looked tired and stressed, lines etched around her eyes, and I could tell this conversation was difficult, painful for her. Tasha, I owe you a huge apology, she began, before I could even sit down, her voice trembling slightly. I should have spoken up weeks ago, but I was afraid Robert wouldn't believe me, and I didn't want to cause more family drama. I was a coward, and I am so deeply sorry. What do you mean, Linda? I asked, my voice soft, surprised by the raw emotion in her confession. Linda pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling slightly, and showed me a series of text messages, a damning exchange. Brianna has been texting me for months, Tasha, asking increasingly intrusive questions about your marriage, your finances, your work schedule, your relationship with Robert. At the time, I thought she was just trying to understand her new family better, trying to connect with Robert's life. But looking back, I realized she was gathering information, meticulously, to use against you. She was building her arsenal. The text messages were indeed damning. Brianna had asked about when Robert and I had arguments, whether I had access to his bank accounts, and even whether I had ever said anything negative about her, even in jest. Linda had answered honestly, innocently, not realizing she was feeding ammunition to someone systematically planning my destruction, unknowingly becoming an accessory to a malicious plot. There's more, Linda continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, her gaze filled with a fresh wave of guilt. About 2 months ago, Brianna asked me to help her with a school project about voice recording and audio editing. She said she needed to create a presentation about how easy it was to fake recordings for a media literacy class. She was very convincing. My blood ran cold, a sickening realization washing over me. "You helped her learn how to fake audio recordings?" I asked, the words barely a breath. "I didn't know that's what she was really doing, Tasha," Linda cried, tears welling in her eyes. "She said it was for school, a harmless assignment. I showed her some basic audio editing software, how to change voice pitch and timing, how to layer sounds. She was very interested in how to make fake conversations sound real, how to perfectly mimic someone else's voice. I thought I was being a helpful aunt. This was it. This was the smoking gun we needed." Brianna hadn't just stumbled onto the idea of fabricating evidence. She had deliberately, cold-bloodedly learned how to do it, using unsuspecting family members to teach her the necessary skills. Her actions were not impulsive. They were calculated, premeditated, and deeply malicious. "Linda, would you be willing to testify about this in court?" I asked, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. She nodded firmly, her eyes filled with a newfound resolve. "Absolutely. What she did to you was wrong, Tasha. Terribly wrong. And I can't stay silent anymore. I won't be complicit in her lies." She paused, then added, her voice softer, "There's something else you should know, too. Robert has been having doubts about Brianna's story for the past week, even before the hospital news came out. He's been struggling." My heart skipped a beat, a flicker of something long extinguished stirring within me. What kind of doubts? He found some inconsistencies in her story, small things at first, then larger ones. And when he pressed her for details, she got defensive, then angry, then evasive. "Yesterday, he asked me directly if I thought it was possible that she had lied about you. And I told him, Tasha, I told him what I should have told him weeks ago, that you're not capable of the things she accused you of. I told him he had made a grave error." For a moment, a fragile, dangerous flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe Robert was finally seeing through his daughter's masterful manipulation. Maybe there was still a chance, a sliver of possibility, to save our marriage, to salvage the life we had built. Then I remembered the look of disgust in his eyes when he threw my keys at my feet. I remembered the cold, legal language of the divorce papers I had signed, the way he had driven past me without acknowledgement, the weeks of silence while my reputation was systematically destroyed, while he stood by and watched. "It's too late, Linda," I said quietly, the words heavy with resignation and a profound sadness. "Even if Robert realizes he was wrong, too much damage has been done. The trust is shattered, irrevocably. I can't go back to a marriage where my husband was willing to throw away 15 years based on his daughter's lies, without so much as a proper conversation, without a shred of doubt. That kind of foundation is too weak to rebuild on." Linda looked sad but understanding, her eyes reflecting my own sorrow. "I'm sorry, Tasha. I really am. Robert made a terrible mistake, and I think he's starting to truly realize the depth of it. He's losing everything, too." "His realization doesn't fix what he broke," I replied, the bitterness a familiar taste now. "But your testimony could help me get justice for what Brianna did to me. It could help stop her from doing this to someone else." After Linda left, I called Janet with the news, my voice filled with a quiet triumph. She was excited, a buzz of professional energy radiating through the phone. "This changes everything, Natasha," she exclaimed. "We now have proof that Brianna deliberately learned how to create fake evidence. We have documentation of her information-gathering campaign, and we have the hospital's evidence that she committed identity theft and computer fraud. This moves from a he said, she said into a verifiable criminal conspiracy." "What happens next?" I asked, a sense of momentum building, the tide finally turning. "We file criminal charges against her for fraud and identity theft. We amend our civil lawsuit to include all this new, compelling evidence, and we prepare for the possibility that she's going to get desperate and do something even more stupid. Manipulators, when cornered, often double down." That evening, I was cooking dinner at Carmen's apartment, the mundane act a small comfort in the whirlwind of my life, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Robert's name, and for a moment, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the screen. We hadn't spoken, not a single word, since the night he kicked me out, since he turned off that porch light and left me in the darkness. I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever he might say, for the emotional toll it might exact. I let it ring, counting each chime. On the fourth ring, I answered, "Natasha." His voice sounded uncertain, almost small, stripped of its usual authority. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Please." "Robert," I said, my voice calm, controlled, a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil I still felt. "I don't think that's a good idea. The time for talking has passed." "Please," he pleaded, desperation coloring his tone. "There are things I need to say, things I need to explain. I think I've made a terrible mistake, a profound, unforgivable mistake." The irony wasn't lost on me. For weeks, I had desperately, agonizingly wanted to hear those words, yearned for his acknowledgement, his remorse. Now that he was finally saying them, truly saying them, I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness, a profound detachment. The well of hope had run dry. "The time for explanations was 3 weeks ago, Robert," I said calmly, deliberately, each word a slow, painful truth. "Before you chose to believe lies over 15 years of marriage, before you threw me out of our home like garbage, before you watched my reputation being systematically shredded, before you allowed my entire life to be destroyed." "Natasha, please. I know I handled this wrong, terribly wrong, but if Brianna lied about you, then I need to make this right. I need to fix what I broke." "If she lied?" I couldn't keep the bitterness, the raw anger out of my voice. The phrase was a fresh sting. "Robert, she didn't just lie. She committed multiple felonies to destroy my life, to ruin my career, to strip me of everything I held dear. And you helped her do it. The hospital has security footage proving she stole my computer credentials. The police are actively investigating her for identity theft and computer fraud and a host of other charges. And you still say if she lied? How much more proof do you need?" There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, a silence that stretched, thick and suffocating between us. "I don't know what to say," he finally admitted, his voice barely audible, choked with what sounded like tears. "I am completely shattered." "There's nothing to say, Robert," I replied, my voice firm, resolute. "You made your choice. You stood by your daughter's lies and you cast me aside. Now I'm making mine." I hung up the phone, a deliberate final act, and then turned it off, silencing the world, silencing him. Tomorrow, I would face whatever came next in this brutal legal battle, this fight for my very identity. But tonight, I just wanted to focus on the future I was building for myself, a future that didn't include the man who had been so willing to believe the worst about me, the man who had proven incapable of trust when it mattered most. The truth, as they say, has a way of coming out, no matter how deeply people try to bury it, no matter how cunningly they weave their web of lies. Over the next week, Robert's world began unraveling just as mine had, but with a different kind of anguish. More evidence of Brianna's deception surfaced, a relentless tide of irrefutable facts. I learned about his growing awareness, his profound despair, through Linda, who called me daily with updates about her brother's deteriorating mental state. "He's been going through Brianna's room, Tasha," Linda told me during one of our conversations, her voice heavy with sorrow. "Not for clothes or belongings, but looking for evidence, anything that might contradict her story, anything that might make sense of what she did. Yesterday he found a notebook where she had been meticulously practicing your handwriting, perfecting her forgery for the fake texts. The image of my husband, once so proud and protective, now secretly investigating his own daughter, searching for proof of her malice, should have given me satisfaction, a grim sense of triumph. But instead, I felt only emptiness, a profound sadness for the man he had become, for the trust he had so readily discarded. Where was this careful attention to evidence, this desperate search for truth, when he was destroying our marriage, when he was casting me aside? Why hadn't he looked for proof before, throwing me out of our home, before believing her insidious fabrications? The injustice of it still burned. "Linda," I said firmly, cutting through her narrative of his suffering, "I don't want to hear about Robert's regrets anymore. Whatever he's going through now, whatever pain he's experiencing, is something he brought on himself. He made his choices." "But Tasha, he's really suffering," she insisted, her voice pleading. "He barely sleeps. He's not eating. He's a shell of himself. I think he's finally realizing what he's lost, the true cost of his blindness." "Good," I replied, the word devoid of malice, but resolute. "He should suffer. He should realize what he's lost, but that doesn't change anything for me. It doesn't undo what he did or how he made me feel." The criminal investigation into Brianna's activities was moving faster than I had expected. Detective Sarah Martinez, the lead on the case, called to update me on their progress, her tone grave, professional. "Miss Coleman, we've obtained a search warrant for Brianna's electronic devices based on the evidence from the hospital," Detective Martinez informed me. "What we found is extensive and incredibly damaging to her credibility, to put it mildly." I was at Janet's office when the call came, and she immediately put it on speaker so we could both hear the full details. Her laptop contains numerous tutorials on creating fake text message screenshots, sophisticated voice alteration software, and literally dozens of practice files where she was experimenting with fabricating conversations, mimicking various voices, including yours. We also found extensive browser history showing research into computer systems at your hospital, including specific searches about accessing patient records. This was no spur-of-the-moment act. It was a well-orchestrated, meticulously planned criminal endeavor. "Is that enough for criminal charges?" Janet asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "More than enough, Ms. Torres," Detective Martinez confirmed. "We're preparing charges for identity theft, computer fraud, defamation, and filing false reports, among others. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case now, and they are taking it very seriously. This is a clear case of premeditated criminal activity." After Detective Martinez hung up, Janet leaned back in her chair, a satisfied, almost triumphant expression on her face. Brianna Coleman is about to learn that actions have consequences, serious consequences, beyond just breaking a family apart. But I suspect she's going to try one more desperate move before she goes down. They always do. Janet was right. That evening, Brianna posted another social media update, this one more desperate, more unhinged than her previous posts. She claimed that I was using my connections at the hospital to frame her, that the evidence against her was being fabricated by corrupt hospital administrators who wanted to cover up their mistake in hiring an abusive employee. The post was filled with spelling errors, rambling accusations that didn't make sense, a frantic, incoherent word salad. It was clear that the relentless pressure, the walls closing in, was getting to her. Her usual careful manipulation was being replaced by raw panic, a desperate lashing out. More importantly, the post's timing was suspiciously precise. It came just hours after the police had searched her devices, which suggested she knew the game was up, that her house of cards was finally collapsing. My phone rang at 11 p.m. that night. It was Robert, and this time, I almost didn't answer. But something in the late hour, the sheer persistence of his calling, made me pick up. "Natasha, I know you don't want to talk to me." His voice sounded shaky, almost frightened. "But you need to know what's happening here. It's a nightmare." "What's happening, Robert?" My voice was calm, detached, a shield against the rising tide of emotion. "Brianna's gone. She packed her things this afternoon and left. She said she was going to stay with friends until this misunderstanding gets sorted out. But I found something after she left, something horrifying." He paused, a ragged breath escaping his lips. "I found a folder on her desk. I think she meant to take it with her, but she was rushing to leave. It contains printed copies of all the fake evidence she created against you. Screenshots of text conversations that never happened, voice recordings that sound exactly like you threatening her, even fake emails supposedly from you to her friends, saying horrible, despicable things about them, trying to isolate her. It's all here, Natasha, all the lies, meticulously crafted." The folder was undeniable proof of premeditation, a physical testament to her calculated malice. It showed that Brianna had been planning this entire campaign for months, carefully crafting each piece of fabricated evidence to build her case against me, to utterly destroy my life. "There's more," Robert continued, his voice breaking, shattering under the weight of his realization. "There are notes in her handwriting about how to destroy your reputation, how to turn me against you, how to make sure you could never come back. She planned all of this, Natasha, every single lie, every single twist. It wasn't a sudden outburst. It was a deliberate, evil plan." I felt a complex mixture of vindication and profound sadness. My marriage was irrevocably over, shattered beyond repair. But at least Robert finally knew the truth, the ugly, devastating truth about what kind of person his beloved daughter really was. The illusions had finally crumbled. "Robert, I need you to turn that folder over to the police immediately," I said, my voice firm, practical. "Don't make copies, don't let anyone else see it, just give it directly to Detective Martinez. It's crucial evidence." "I will. I promise," he choked out. "But Natasha, I need you to know how sorry I am. I failed you in every way possible. I chose to believe lies over the woman I promised to love and protect. I threw away 15 years of marriage because I was too blind, too deluded, to see what my own daughter really was. I was a fool." His apology felt sincere, raw, ripped from the depths of his anguish. But it was also far, far too late. The damage was done. The trust was obliterated. "I'm sorry too, Robert," I replied, my voice steady, though a deep ache resonated within me. "I'm sorry that it took criminal evidence to make you realize your wife wasn't your enemy. I'm sorry that you were willing to destroy our marriage to protect someone who was systematically lying to you, lying about me. But mostly, I'm sorry that the man I loved and trusted was never really who I thought he was. That's the hardest pill to swallow." "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice raw. "The Robert I first married would have listened to me. He would have investigated, truly investigated, before passing judgment. He would have protected me instead of casting me aside like garbage. That man either never existed, Robert, or he died somewhere along the way, replaced by a man blinded by paternal loyalty, a man who chose fiction over fact." There was a long, agonizing silence on the phone. "Is there any chance?" he finally whispered, desperation clinging to every syllable. "Can we try to work this out? Can we go to counseling, find some way to rebuild what was broken between us? I'm willing to do anything." The question I had been dreading, the one I had once longed for with every fiber of my being. 3 weeks ago, even a week ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. I would have forgiven him anything, absolved him of all his wrongs, just to save our marriage, to reclaim the life I had known. But 3 weeks ago felt like a lifetime now, an eternity away. I had walked through fire, and I had emerged changed. "No, Robert," I said, the word coming out with a quiet finality, an unshakable resolve. "There's no going back from what you did. Even if I could forgive you for believing Brianna's lies, I can't forgive you for how you treated me, for the casual cruelty with which you dismissed our shared life. I can't forgive you for throwing me out of our home like garbage, without a second thought, without a single moment of doubt. I can't forgive you for not fighting for us, for not fighting for me." "You simply gave up." "But if I had known," he interjected, a desperate plea. "You should have known, Robert," I countered, my voice rising slightly, the pain and frustration finally breaking through my carefully constructed composure. "You should have known me well enough after 15 years to realize I wasn't capable of what she accused me of. You should have cared enough about our marriage, about our partnership, to investigate before destroying it. You should have loved me enough, trusted me enough, to give me the benefit of the doubt, to stand by me, your wife." I could hear him crying on the other end of the line, a choked, heartbroken sound, and for a fleeting moment my resolve wavered. This was still the man I had loved for 15 years, the man I had planned to grow old with, the father of our future that never was. Then I remembered standing in our driveway in the cold darkness with my suitcases, watching him turn off the porch light and leave me utterly alone. That memory, raw and stinging, solidified my decision. "The divorce papers have been filed, Robert," I reiterated, my voice clear and unwavering. "I'm not changing my mind. This is over." I hung up the phone and turned it off for the night, severing the last digital link between us. Tomorrow would bring more developments in the case against Brianna, more evidence of her deception, and probably more attempts by Robert to win me back, attempts that would be futile. But tonight, for the very first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly at peace with my decision. I was choosing myself. I was choosing my own dignity, my own self-respect, over a marriage that had been built on foundations far weaker than I had ever realized. The woman who had been thrown out of her house 3 weeks ago, broken and despairing, was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who wouldn't settle for being anyone's second choice, anyone's dispensable commodity, ever again. Robert appeared on Carmen's doorstep exactly 4 weeks after he had thrown me out of our home, a desolate figure, a shadow of the man I once knew. I was in the kitchen, making breakfast, the comforting aroma of coffee and toast filling the air, when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see him standing there, a bouquet of flowers in one hand and what looked like a small velvet jewelry box in the other. He looked terrible. His usually neat hair was disheveled, his clothes rumpled. He had lost weight, his face gaunt, and there were deep, dark circles under his eyes that screamed of sleepless nights and gnawing regret. For a moment, a fleeting instant, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Carmen answered the door, her expression hardening as she saw Robert. I could hear their conversation from the kitchen, every word amplified by the quiet tension. "She doesn't want to see you, Robert," Carmen said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Please, just leave." "Please, Carmen," he pleaded, his voice hoarse, desperate. "I know I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I need to talk to her. I need to explain what I've learned about Brianna, and I need to ask for her forgiveness. I need to make things right." "You had weeks to figure out the truth, Robert," Carmen countered, her voice sharp with a protective anger. "You chose to believe lies instead. Now you live with the consequences. You made your bed." "5 minutes, Carmen. That's all I'm asking for. Please." I took a deep breath, gathered my resolve, and walked to the door, my presence stopping their argument. Robert looked up at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading hope, a flicker of the man I once loved. "Hello, Robert." "Natasha, thank God," he gasped, relief washing over his face, though tinged with desperation. "I've been trying to reach you, but your phone goes straight to voicemail." "I changed my number," I stated simply, leaving no room for ambiguity. "Carmen, it's okay. I can handle this." My sister gave Robert a warning look, a silent threat, and retreated to the kitchen, though I knew she was listening to every word, ready to intervene if needed. "Can I come in?" he asked, a hopeful tremor in his voice. "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say it from there." My voice was calm, firm, a wall he could not penetrate. He held out the flowers, a traditional peace offering, and when I didn't take them, he set them gently on the porch railing, his shoulders slumping. "I brought these for you, and this—" He opened the velvet jewelry box to reveal a beautiful diamond necklace, a piece I had admired months ago in a store window, a wistful fantasy. "You think gifts are going to fix what you broke, Robert?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "No, I just wanted to show you that I've been thinking about you," he stammered, clearly flustered. "That I remember what makes you happy, what you like, that I still care." "What would make me happy, Robert?" I said, my voice gaining strength, each word a stone in the foundation of my new resolve, "is if you had listened to me 4 weeks ago when I told you Brianna was lying. What would make me happy is if you had chosen to trust your wife over your daughter's baseless accusations. What would make me happy is if you had acted like a partner, like the husband you claim to be, instead of a judge and jury, delivering a swift, unjust verdict." He stepped closer to the door, his face crumpled, and I could see fresh tears welling in his eyes, tracing paths down his unshaven cheeks. "I know I failed you, Natasha. I know I made the worst mistake of my life, the most catastrophic error, but I was scared. When your child comes to you claiming abuse, it's hard to think rationally. My parental instinct took over and I was utterly blind." "I was your wife, Robert, for 15 years, I reminded him, my voice tight with pain, the memory of that bond a raw nerve. "I was your wife. That should have counted for something. That should have been more than a parental instinct to blindly believe." "It did count. It does count. That's why I'm here now, begging you," he insisted, his voice choked with emotion. "I've seen all the evidence now. I know what Brianna really did, and I know what kind of person she is. The police showed me everything they found on her computer, all the fake evidence she created, all the meticulous planning she did to destroy your reputation, our marriage. I see it all now, Tasha, with terrible clarity." I had already heard about the overwhelming evidence from Detective Martinez, who had called to inform me that formal charges were being filed against Brianna. She was facing multiple felony counts, and if convicted, she could serve several years in prison. The system, slow and painful, was finally working. "So now that you have proof," I said, my voice laced with a bitter irony, Now that the police have confirmed what I was telling you all along, suddenly I'm worth believing? Suddenly I'm worth fighting for? It's not like that, Natasha, he pleaded, reaching out a hand, then dropping it, sensing my impenetrable barrier. It's exactly like that, Robert. You needed strangers with badges, with undeniable digital evidence, to convince you that your wife wasn't a monster. That tells me everything I need to know about what our marriage really meant to you. It was conditional, fragile, easily discarded when challenged by someone else's narrative. It tells me how little faith you actually had in me. Robert was crying openly now, great ragged sobs that shook his frame. Part of me, a small lingering part, wanted to comfort him, to offer the solace I had given him for 15 years, to smooth his hair and tell him it would be okay. But that part was getting smaller every day, replaced by something harder, something fiercely self-protective. The well of my compassion for him had run dry. Natasha, please, I'll do anything to make this right, he pleaded, desperation in every word. We can go to counseling. I'll get therapy to figure out why I handled this so badly, why I was so blind. We can start over, rebuild our trust, brick by agonizing brick. I reached into my purse and pulled out a plain white envelope I had been carrying for 2 days, waiting for this moment, steeling myself. Here, I said, holding it out to him, a definitive symbolic gesture. What is this? He asked, his voice thick with apprehension. Divorce papers, I stated plainly. Signed and finalized. Our marriage is over, Robert. It has been for weeks. The color drained from his face as he opened the envelope, his hands trembling, and saw the official documents inside, stark and unforgiving. You can't mean this. After everything we've been through together, after 15 years. After 15 years, you threw me away based on lies, I retorted, the words sharp, precise. After 15 years, you chose to believe I was capable of abusing your daughter, rather than investigating the truth, or trusting the woman you supposedly loved. After 15 years, you decided I wasn't worth the benefit of the doubt, wasn't worth the fight, wasn't worth believing. But I know better now. I understand what really happened. And that's exactly the problem, Robert. You needed to be proven right instead of trusting me. You needed evidence instead of faith. You needed confirmation instead of love. Our marriage wasn't built on faith in each other. It was built on a superficial foundation that crumbled at the first serious test. I watched him struggle with the devastating reality of what I was saying, the finality of my words. For weeks, he had probably imagined this moment going differently. He had probably believed that once he apologized, once he admitted his mistake, I would forgive him, and we would rebuild our marriage, return to what was familiar. He was wrong. I don't accept this, he said, holding up the divorce papers, a desperate defiance in his eyes. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to prove to you that our marriage is worth saving, that I can earn back your trust. Robert, the divorce is already final. You can't fight it because I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give me. I'm not trying to take the house or demand alimony. I'm not making claims on your retirement or asking for half of everything we built together. I want nothing from you, nothing at all. What do you mean? He asked, confused, the implications slowly dawning on him. I mean, I'm walking away clean. I'm taking my personal belongings, my car, and my freedom. That's all I want from this marriage. All I want from you. The realization hit him like a physical blow, a sudden, brutal impact. You don't want anything from me? Not even half of what we built? That's right. I don't want your money, your house, or your guilt. I just want to be free of the man who was willing to throw me away so easily, so casually after 15 years. He sank down onto Carmen's porch steps, still clutching the finalized divorce papers, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. This can't be how it ends. 15 years can't just be over like this, vanished into thin air. 15 years ended the night you put my suitcases on the front porch and told me not to come back, Robert, I said, my voice quiet, firm. This is just the paperwork, the official confirmation of what you already did. I started to close the door, but he called out to me one last time, his voice raw with despair. Natasha, I love you. I've always loved you and I always will. If I could take back what I did, if I could go back and handle things differently, I would 1,000 times over. But you can't, I finished for him, my voice unwavering. And even if you could, it wouldn't matter, because now I know who you really are when things get difficult, when trust is truly tested. Now I know that your love has conditions, and that 15 years of marriage isn't enough to earn me the benefit of the doubt, isn't enough to secure my place in your life. "That's not fair!" he cried, looking up at me, his eyes red and swollen. "Fair?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it, only a profound, exhausted sadness. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you believed your daughter's lies without investigation? Was it fair when you threw me out of my own home, the home I helped build, the home I cherished? Was it fair when you let my reputation be destroyed on social media by your own daughter while you stayed silent while you turned your back?" He had no answer for that, only his broken sobs. "The divorce is final, Robert. Move on with your life, and let me move on with mine." I closed the door, gently but firmly, and locked it, the click a satisfying punctuation mark on the end of a very long, painful sentence. I left him sitting on the porch, surrounded by wilted flowers and expensive jewelry that couldn't possibly buy back what he had so carelessly destroyed. Through the window, I watched him sit there for almost an hour, staring at the divorce papers, as if he couldn't quite believe they were real, couldn't fathom the finality. Finally he got up, leaving the untouched flowers and the glistening jewelry on the porch railing, symbols of a desperate, futile gesture. He walked slowly back to his car, a defeated man. Carmen came and stood beside me, her arm wrapping around my shoulder as we watched him drive away, disappearing into the twilight. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice soft, understanding. I thought about it for a moment, letting the myriad emotions swirl and settle. "Free," I said, the word a whisper, then louder, clearer. "Finally, for the first time in 4 weeks, I feel completely, absolutely free. The man who had been my husband for 15 years was gone, and in his place was a stranger who had shown me what conditional love truly looked like, how easily it could break. I was done with conditional love, done with having to constantly prove my worth to people who should have known it already, to a man who should have believed in me without question. It was time to build a life where I was valued, trusted, and cherished without having to earn it every single day, every single moment." The news of Brianna's arrest spread through our community like wildfire, a sudden, shocking shift in the narrative. Within hours of Detective Martinez taking her into custody at her friend's house, my phone was buzzing relentlessly with messages, a flurry of digital apologies from people who had shunned me just weeks before. Now, they wanted to apologize, to explain that they had been deceived, to somehow make amends for believing the lies, for participating in the public condemnation. I ignored most of them. Their sudden change of heart felt hollow, opportunistic. Janet called me that evening with updates from the district attorney's office, her voice crackling with news. "Brianna has been officially charged with 6 felony counts, Natasha. Identity theft, computer fraud, filing false reports, defamation, fraud, and stalking. Her bail has been set at $50,000, and it's unlikely she'll make it without help. These are serious charges, and the DA is pushing for a strong conviction." "Is Robert going to post bail for her?" I asked, a morbid curiosity guiding my question. "That's where things get interesting," Janet said, a note of surprise in her voice. "According to my sources, he's refusing to have any contact with her. He's not returning her calls from jail, not accepting the charges. It seems his disillusionment is complete, and he's drawing a very firm line." The thought of Brianna sitting in a jail cell, finally facing genuine consequences for her malicious actions, should have given me a profound satisfaction, a vengeful joy. Instead, I felt only emptiness, a strange, quiet weariness. My reputation was still bruised, though on the mend. My marriage was irrevocably over. My life had been turned upside down, then righted again through sheer force of will. Her punishment, however deserved, wouldn't undo any of that damage, wouldn't erase the pain she had inflicted. It was simply the logical conclusion to her choices, not a solution to my suffering. "There's something else you should know," Janet continued, shifting her tone. "Robert's attorney contacted me today. He wants to discuss a settlement, a comprehensive one." "What kind of settlement?" I asked, already bracing myself. "He's offering to give you the house, half of all marital assets, and substantial alimony," she explained, listing the terms. "Apparently he feels a profound guilt about how this all played out, and he wants to atone financially. He understands the immense harm he allowed to be inflicted upon you." I thought about the house, the place where we had been happy for so many years, the home where I had meticulously curated a life, where I had planned to grow old with Robert. Now it felt tainted, filled with memories of betrayal and broken trust, a mausoleum of lost dreams. "I don't want it, Janet," I said, the words surprising even myself, but carrying a deep resonance of truth. "I don't want anything from him, nothing that ties me to that past, to that pain." "Natasha, you're entitled to half of everything you built together," she insisted, her lawyer's instinct for fair compensation kicking in. "You worked throughout your marriage. You contributed significantly to your joint assets. You have legal rights, substantial ones, that you are simply walking away from." "I don't care about legal rights in this instance," I clarified, my resolve hardening. "I want to start fresh, truly fresh, with nothing that ties me to him or reminds me of what I lost. I want to build a life that is entirely my own, unburdened by the ghosts of a broken past. The house, the money, it all feels like blood money to me now." Janet was quiet for a moment, processing my unprecedented decision. "Are you sure about this, Natasha? You could be giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars, a significant financial cushion that could transform your future." "Money can't buy back my dignity or my peace of mind, Janet," I replied, the truth of it absolute. "I'd rather have less and be truly free than have more and feel like I owe him something, or that I'm still connected to that painful chapter. My freedom is worth more than any sum." After we hung up, I sat in Carmen's living room, a profound quiet settling around me, and thought about the future I wanted to build. I had been so focused on clearing my name, on getting through the divorce, on simply surviving, that I hadn't really considered what came next, what my liberated life might look like. Now the canvas was blank, waiting for me to paint a new masterpiece. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Linda knocked on Carmen's door, looking nervous, her arms laden with a large, familiar-looking box. "I hope it's okay that I came by," she said when I answered, her voice hesitant. "I have some things that belong to you." The box contained personal items from my marriage, photo albums filled with smiling faces, jewelry, books I cherished, small keepsakes, sentimental treasures. Robert had apparently gone through my remaining belongings and asked Linda to return them to me. "How is he doing?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know, wasn't sure I could bear to hear of his continued anguish. "Not well," she admitted, her face etched with concern. "He's been staying at my house since Brianna was arrested. He can't bear to be in your house alone, knowing what he did there, knowing the betrayal that unfolded within those walls. It's a constant reminder of his failure." Linda sat down on Carmen's couch and looked at me with sad, tired eyes. "He asked me to tell you something, Tasha, if you're willing to listen." "Linda, please don't," I began, raising a hand. "I've heard his apologies, and they don't change anything. They are too late to mend what was broken." "This isn't an apology, Tasha," she clarified, her voice gentle but firm. "He wanted you to know that he's selling the house. He can't stand to live there anymore, knowing how he treated you in the place you should have felt safest, most loved. He says he's going to start over somewhere new, too." That surprised me. The house had been Robert's pride and joy, his sanctuary, the first major purchase we had made as a married couple, a symbol of our shared future. Its sale signified a definitive break for him, too. "He's also entered therapy," Linda continued, her voice gaining a touch of hope. "He wants to understand how he could have been so profoundly wrong about someone he loved, and how he could have been so easily manipulated by his own daughter. He's trying to understand his own blind spots, his own complicity. I'm glad he's getting help," I said, and I meant it. His journey of self-discovery, however painful, was necessary. "But that doesn't change what happened between us. That doesn't erase the betrayal." "I know," she replied, her gaze understanding. "He knows too. He's not trying to win you back anymore, Natasha. He's just trying to figure out how to live with what he's done, how to make peace with the wreckage of his own making." After Linda left, I looked through the box of memories she had brought. Wedding photos where we looked so young and hopeful, brimming with naive optimism. Vacation pictures from trips we had taken together, vibrant snapshots of shared joy. Love letters Robert had written to me during our early years of marriage, filled with tender promises and declarations of eternal devotion. It was like looking at the life of a different person, someone who had trusted completely, loved without reservation, believed wholeheartedly in the fairy tale. That woman, I realized, was gone, replaced by someone wiser, more guarded, but infinitely stronger. My phone rang, interrupting my bittersweet trip down memory lane. It was Dr. Peterson from the hospital. "Natasha, I'm calling with some very good news," he announced, his voice beaming. "The board of directors met yesterday to discuss your case and your invaluable contributions. We've decided to officially offer you the position of Assistant Director of Nursing. It's a promotion that we feel is long overdue." The promotion was significant, both in terms of responsibility and a substantial salary increase. It was also a clear, unequivocal statement from the hospital administration that they deeply regretted how they had handled the initial false allegations against me, a public vindication of my character and competence. "I'm honored by the offer, Dr. Peterson," I said, genuinely touched. "But I need some time to think about it. It's a big decision, and I'm at a crossroads in my life." "Of course, Natasha. Take all the time you need," he replied, understanding. "But I want you to know that this hospital values you immensely, and we're committed to making sure nothing like this ever happens again. We want you here." After hanging up, I realized that I was indeed at a crossroads. I could accept the promotion, rebuild my career at the hospital where I had worked for years, in the city where my life had been dismantled, or I could use this as an opportunity, a powerful springboard, to start completely fresh somewhere else, to truly sever all ties to the past. Carmen found me sitting on her back porch that evening, staring at the sunset, painting the sky in fiery shades of pink and gold, lost in thought about my options. "You know, you can stay here as long as you need to, Tasha," she said, settling into the chair next to mine, her presence a comforting anchor. "This is your home for as long as you want it." "I've been thinking about that," I mused, the words hanging in the crisp evening air. "About staying. I mean, is this where I want to rebuild my life? In the same town where everyone knows my business, where every grocery store visit or coffee shop run is tinged with the memory of what happened to me, where everyone has an opinion, however unspoken, about my past?" "Where would you go?" she asked, her voice soft, knowing. I had been researching opportunities in other cities, places where I could start completely fresh, without the baggage of the past few months, without the lingering whispers of scandal. "There's a hospital in Denver that's looking for an experienced nurse manager. The mountains, fresh air, a place where nobody knows my story, nobody knows Robert, nobody knows Brianna, a true blank slate, blank." "Running away?" Carmen questioned gently. "No," I corrected, a smile playing on my lips. "Running towards something better, running towards my future, towards a life I define entirely for myself." Carmen was quiet for a moment, lost in her own thoughts. "You know, 6 months ago, I would have said you were crazy to even consider leaving Robert. You two seemed so solid, so perfect together, the ideal couple." "We weren't perfect," I admitted, a profound truth settling in my heart. "I can see that now. I was just so invested in the image of our marriage, in the perception of perfection, that I ignored the deep cracks in the foundation. I idealized what we had, despite the warning signs." "What do you mean?" "Robert always had trouble trusting my judgment when it came to his daughter. Even before this happened, he would subtly take her side in small disputes, dismiss my concerns about her behavior as overreactions or stepmother bias. I told myself it was natural for a father to be protective, to shield his child. But really, it was a sign that he didn't value my opinion as much as I thought, that his trust in me had limits. It was always conditional. I spent 15 years trying to be the perfect wife, the understanding stepmother, the woman who never complained or demanded too much, who smoothed over every conflict. And in the end, none of that mattered, because he was willing to throw me away the moment things got truly difficult, the moment his parental loyalty was challenged. It was the first time I had articulated that realization. Saying it out loud felt liberating, a heavy weight lifted from my soul. Carmen reached over and squeezed my hand, a silent affirmation of my strength. "So what are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes filled with pride and unwavering support. I looked at the sunset, painting the sky in vibrant, hopeful hues. And for the first time in months, for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly hopeful about the future, a future I would build entirely for myself. "I'm going to take the job in Denver," I announced, my voice clear and confident. "I'm going to start over in a place where I can be whoever I want to be, not defined by what happened to me here, not defined by my past. I'm going to rediscover Natasha." "And if Robert tries to stop you?" "He has no right to stop me," I replied, a fierce independence in my tone. "He made his choice 4 weeks ago when he threw my suitcases on the front porch. Now I'm making mine, and this time it's all about me." 6 months later, I stood in the bustling lobby of Denver General Hospital, wearing crisp scrubs with nurse manager proudly embroidered below my name. The majestic Rocky Mountains were visible through the large panoramic windows, snow-capped peaks that reminded me daily that I was living a completely different life now, a life of my own design. The transition hadn't been easy, not by any stretch. Those first few weeks in Denver were lonely, filled with the exhausting challenge of learning new hospital systems, meeting hundreds of new colleagues, and adjusting to life in an unfamiliar city, navigating a new culture. But with each passing day, with each new challenge overcome, I felt stronger, more confident, more certain in my decision to start fresh, to build anew. My new apartment was small but cozy, comfortable, with a balcony that looked out toward the stunning mountains, a constant source of inspiration. I had furnished it slowly, deliberately, choosing each piece carefully, infusing it with my own personality instead of just filling space with hand-me-downs or compromises. Everything in my new home was chosen by me, for me, with no compromises or considerations for anyone else's preferences, a tangible manifestation of my newfound autonomy. The work itself was challenging, intensely demanding, but profoundly rewarding. I was managing a diverse team of 40 nurses across 3 departments, implementing new patient care protocols, and working on innovative projects that would ultimately improve outcomes for thousands of patients. It was the kind of professional challenge I had always wanted, but never had the opportunity to truly pursue while I was focused on supporting Robert's career and managing the often complex dynamics of a blended family. I was thriving, professionally and personally. My phone rang while I was reviewing staffing schedules for the upcoming week, a welcome interruption. Carmen's name appeared on the screen, and I smiled as I answered. "Hey, sister, how's life in the mountains treating you?" "Good, really good, actually," I replied, a genuine warmth in my voice. "How are things back home, in the land of my former life?" Carmen updated me on family news and local gossip, a comforting connection to a world I had left behind, before getting to what I knew was the real reason for her call. Robert's civil trial against Brianna starts next week. After Brianna's criminal conviction and sentencing to 3 years in prison, Robert, through Janet, had filed a civil lawsuit against his daughter for the profound financial and emotional damages her malicious lies had caused him. Janet was representing him, having taken the case on a contingency basis, a testament to her belief in the strength of the evidence. "How is he doing with all that?" I asked, a flicker of residual concern, however diminished. "Linda says he's completely focused on the case, consumed by it, but still struggling deeply," Carmen relayed. "Therapy is helping," she says, "but he's having a really hard time accepting that his daughter is really the person the evidence shows her to be. It's a painful awakening for him." I felt a pang of sympathy for Robert, despite everything that had happened between us. Learning that your own child is capable of such calculated cruelty, such cold-blooded malice, had to be devastating, a wound that would never truly heal. "And how are you doing with all of this?" Carmen asked, her voice gentle, redirecting the focus back to me. "Any regrets about your decision to start over, to leave everything behind?" I looked out my office window at the magnificent mountains, their peaks touching the sky, and thought about the question, truly contemplated it. "None," I said, the word ringing with clarity and absolute conviction. For the first time in my adult life, I'm making decisions based entirely on what I want, what makes me happy, what fulfills my spirit. It's liberating in a way I never expected, a profound sense of self-ownership. "No loneliness, then?" Carmen pressed, always perceptive. "No second thoughts about the divorce, the hard choices?" "No loneliness," I confirmed. "Not the crushing kind I feared. I go to dinner with colleagues sometimes. I've joined a fantastic hiking group that explores different trails every weekend, pushing my physical and mental limits. I'm even taking a pottery class on Thursday evenings, getting my hands dirty, creating something tangible. I'm building a life that's entirely mine, Carmen, and it feels incredible. It feels whole." It was true. The loneliness I had feared never materialized, never fully took hold, because I was too busy discovering who Natasha truly was when she wasn't trying to be someone's wife, someone's stepmother, someone's helper. I was too busy cultivating my own interests, my own community, my own inner life. "What about dating?" Carmen asked, a playful note entering her voice. "Any romantic prospects in your exciting new life?" I laughed, a genuine, joyful sound. "I'm not ready for that yet, not remotely. I need to be completely comfortable being alone, completely secure in my own identity, before I even consider being with someone else. I spent so many years defining myself through my relationship with Robert, through my roles as wife and stepmother, that I need time, ample time, to figure out who Natasha is when she's not attached to anyone. I need to build that internal reservoir of self-love first. After we hung up, I reflected on how much I had changed in just 6 short months. The woman who had begged Robert to listen to her, who had desperately wanted to save her marriage, who felt utterly lost without him, felt like a stranger now, a ghost from a past life. In her place was someone who had learned to value her own opinion above all others, someone who would never again accept being treated as less than she was worth, someone who recognized her own strength and resilience. That evening, I was preparing dinner, a simple meal, when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a fleeting moment, a ghost of a fear, I wondered if it might be Robert. He had discovered my address somehow and had sent several letters over the past few months, all of which I had returned unopened, his attempts at contact futile. Instead, I found a delivery person holding a large, elegant bouquet of flowers. "Natasha Coleman?" "That's me," I replied, curiosity piqued. He handed me the flowers in a small, sealed envelope. "These are from a Robert Coleman. He asked me to tell you that he's not trying to win you back or change your mind about anything. He just wanted you to know he's proud of how you've rebuilt your life." After the delivery person left, I sat on my couch and stared at the flowers. They were beautiful white roses mixed with delicate baby's breath, elegant and simple, a stark contrast to the desperate, wilting bouquet he had brought to Carmen's door months earlier. This felt different. I opened the envelope and found a short note, written in Robert's familiar handwriting, but neater, more deliberate than usual. "I saw the article about your promotion in the Denver newspaper. I'm truly proud of what you've accomplished and the incredible strength you've shown. I know you don't want to hear from me, and I respect that completely. This is goodbye. I hope you find all the happiness you deserve." The article he mentioned was a feature piece about innovative patient care programs that had run in the Denver Post. I had been interviewed as part of the hospital's new leadership team, and the article had been picked up by several other regional newspapers. I sat there, holding Robert's note, feeling a complex, swirling mix of emotions. There was sadness for what we had lost, for the dreams that had died. There was anger for how it had ended, for the pain he had caused. And there was something else, something that might have been a nascent, fragile form of forgiveness for the man who had made such a terrible, terrible mistake. But there was also, and perhaps most importantly, a profound recognition that this was truly the end of our story, the final, unequivocal closure. Robert was finally letting me go completely, without conditions, without expectations, without attempts to win me back. In a strange, unexpected way, it felt like the most respectful thing he had done since the night he threw me out. I put the beautiful white roses in a vase and placed them on my kitchen table, a silent testament. They would remind me not of what I had lost, but of how far I had come, of the resilience I had found within myself. My phone buzzed with a text from my hiking group leader. "Great weather for tomorrow's trail. You still planning to join us for the sunrise hike?" I typed back quickly, a smile on my face. "Wouldn't miss it." Tam, these were the relationships I valued now, uncomplicated friendships based on shared interests, mutual respect, and genuine connection. People who knew me as Natasha, the nurse manager, the hiking enthusiast, the pottery student, not as someone's ex-wife or a victim of lies or a cautionary tale, just Natasha. As I prepared for bed that night, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw someone I barely recognized from a year ago. My hair was shorter, styled in a way that was practical for my active, independent lifestyle. My face looked younger, free from the deep stress lines that had deepened and etched themselves into my skin during those final, agonizing months of my marriage. My eyes were clear, bright, and confident, reflecting an inner peace I hadn't known in years. I was 38 years old, and for the first time in my adult life, I belonged completely to myself, whole and undivided. 1 year after Robert had thrown my suitcases onto the front porch, after he had cast me out into the cold, I stood once again in Janet's law office in my hometown, signing the final documents that would definitively close the chapter on that painful, transformative period of my life. I had flown back to testify in Robert's civil case against Brianna, and the jury had awarded him substantial damages, a vindication of his suffering, a punitive measure for the lies that had destroyed his marriage and reputation. The judge ordered her to pay $200,000 in damages, Janet explained as I signed the last of the paperwork. Of course, she's unlikely to have that kind of money for years, if ever, given her current circumstances. But the judgment will follow her for the rest of her life, a permanent scar on her financial and legal record. It's a heavy consequence for her choices. Brianna had been released from prison after serving only 18 months of her 3-year sentence, but the felony convictions on her record made finding good employment nearly impossible. According to Linda, she was living in another state, working in retail, and struggling to rebuild any kind of normal life, forever burdened by her past actions. "What about Robert?" I asked, a flicker of genuine curiosity. "How did he handle the trial, having to testify against his own daughter?" "It was difficult for him, emotionally excruciating," Janet admitted. Having to testify about what his daughter did, listening to all the evidence about her planning and manipulation, the sheer malice of it all. But I think it was also therapeutic in a way. He finally got to tell his side of the story, to publicly explain how he was deceived, how he came to his devastating realization. There was a sense of justice for him, too. I had been in the courtroom for my own testimony, and I had seen Robert for the first time in months. He looked older, grayer, the lines of worry more deeply etched. But there was something peaceful, a quiet acceptance about his demeanor that hadn't been there during our marriage, a stillness that spoke of inner work. Therapy and the passage of time seemed to have helped him find some measure of acceptance about what had happened, about the painful truth of his daughter's character and his own misjudgment. "He asked me to give you something," Janet said, pulling a plain envelope from her desk drawer, her eyes twinkling. "Janet, I told you I don't want—" I began, bracing for another offer I would refuse. "It's not what you think, Natasha. Just look at it." Inside the envelope was a check, made out to me for $100,000. Half of the damages Robert had been awarded in the civil case. "He wants you to have half of the judgment," Janet explained, a soft smile on her face. "He said that Brianna's lies destroyed your life just as much as they destroyed his, and you deserve compensation for what you went through, for the pain and suffering, for the rebuilding." I stared at the check, overwhelmed by the gesture, by the unexpected act of generosity. Robert could have kept the money, could have easily justified it as compensation for the immense pain of losing his marriage, for the shame of his public humiliation. Instead, he was sharing it with me, acknowledging in this tangible way that I had been a victim too, that my suffering was real and deserved recognition. It was his final, powerful act of apology, his true expression of remorse. "There's a note with it, too," Janet said. Robert's handwriting was neater than usual, as if he had taken special care with this final message, a last heartfelt communication. "This money can't undo what happened, but I hope it can help you build the life you truly deserve. You were always the strongest person I knew. Seeing how you've rebuilt yourself, how you've triumphed after what I did to you, only confirms that in my mind. Use this to buy a house, take a dream vacation, or simply have security and peace of mind. You've earned it, and so much more. I am so deeply sorry for everything." I folded the note carefully and put it back in the envelope, a profound sense of closure settling over me. "Janet," I said, a clear vision forming in my mind, "I need you to do something for me, something important." "Of course, Natasha, anything." "I want you to donate this money to the hospital's victim advocacy program," I stated, my voice firm, resolute, all of it. I want it to go toward helping other people who have been falsely accused or had their lives destroyed by lies, by manipulation, by betrayal. I want it to be a force for good, born from this terrible experience. Janet looked genuinely surprised, her eyes widening. "Natasha, this is a substantial amount of money. You could buy a house in Denver, pay off any debt, secure your future in an incredible way. You deserve it." "I've already secured my future, Janet," I replied, a quiet strength in my voice. "I did it myself, without Robert's money or anyone else's help. This money, however well-intentioned, represents the worst period of my life, the trauma, the betrayal, and I don't want it to benefit me personally. But maybe, just maybe, it can help someone else who's going through what I went through, who feels as lost and broken as I once did. That would be a true legacy." After signing the donation paperwork, a final definitive act of severing ties with the past, I drove through my old neighborhood for the first time since moving to Denver. The house Robert and I had shared, the place that had been the epicenter of my pain, was sold. A young family's toys were scattered across the front yard, a bicycle, a brightly colored ball. It looked happy, lived in, vibrant, much the way it had when Robert and I were first married, before the shadows of deception had fallen. I felt no sadness seeing it, no pang of longing. The woman who had been dragged from that house in shame, broken and weeping, was gone, replaced by someone stronger, more self-assured, someone who had built her own sanctuary. My phone rang as I was driving to the airport, a final call before I returned to my new life. It was Dr. Martinez from Denver General. "Natasha, I hope your trip is going well. I'm calling with some incredibly exciting news." "Oh?" I asked, a smile already forming on my face, anticipating good tidings. "The board of directors approved your proposal for the new trauma counseling program. Unanimously. You'll have a budget of $500,000 to implement it over the next 2 years. It's a huge vote of confidence in your vision and leadership." The trauma counseling program was my passion project, born directly from my own experience of having my world turned upside down and needing to rebuild from nothing, from the ground up. It was a comprehensive support system for patients and families dealing with sudden medical crises, helping them navigate the profound emotional and psychological aftermath. "That's wonderful news, Dr. Martinez. Truly wonderful. I can't wait to get started. My heart is in this." "There's more," she added, her voice bubbling with excitement. "The program has already attracted significant attention from other hospitals in the region. We've received inquiries about expanding it system-wide, which could mean a promotion for you, Natasha, Regional Director of Patient Services. It's a position you've more than earned." Regional Director. It was a position, a level of leadership I never could have imagined achieving when I was focused on being the perfect wife and stepmother, when my aspirations were subsumed by others' needs. Now, it felt like a natural progression of the career I was building entirely on my own merits, on my own passion, on my own strength. On the plane back to Denver, as the familiar landscape began to appear beneath the clouds, I thought about the incredible journey that had brought me to this very moment. A year ago, I had been a woman whose identity was completely tied to her marriage, who measured her worth by how well she supported her husband's happiness, by how seamlessly she fit into his life. The betrayal and divorce had felt like the end of everything, the absolute destruction of my world. Instead, it had been the beginning, the painful but necessary catalyst for my transformation. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos from my recent hiking trip to Rocky Mountain National Park. There I was, at the summit of a 14,000-foot peak, arms raised in triumph, a genuine, unburdened smile on my face, surrounded by friends who knew nothing about my past, except that I was someone who showed up, worked hard, and could be counted on. That was who I was now, not Robert's ex-wife, not the victim of Brianna's lies, but simply Natasha, a woman who had lost everything and, in the process, discovered that everything she truly needed had been inside her all along. As the plane descended toward Denver, the city lights twinkling below, I could see the majestic mountains in the distance, bathed in the golden afternoon light, beckoning me. Tomorrow, I would return to work, to my new office, to projects that mattered deeply to me, projects that would make a tangible difference in the lives of others. This weekend, I would join my hiking group for a challenging camping trip in the wilderness, pushing my limits, embracing the beauty of the unknown. Next month, I was planning a solo vacation to Italy, something I had always wanted to do but never had the courage or the confidence to attempt while married. My life was full of possibilities now, limited only by my own imagination and courage. And after everything I had survived, after enduring the crucible of betrayal and rebuilding myself from the ashes, I had learned that my imagination was limitless, and my courage was stronger than I had ever believed possible. The plane touched down smoothly in Denver as the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple. I gathered my things, my small carry-on bag, and walked toward the terminal, toward my new life, toward a future that belonged entirely to me, shaped by my choices, my dreams, my resilience. Behind me, in a city I would probably never visit again, Robert was learning, slowly and painfully, to live with the consequences of his choices, to confront his own blindness. Brianna was struggling with the harsh reality that actions have lasting, indelible consequences, that deceit carries a heavy price. The people who had believed lies about me were dealing with their own guilt and regret, facing their own reckoning. But ahead of me were mountains to climb, dreams to pursue, and a version of myself I was still joyfully discovering, still eagerly shaping. The woman who had once begged for her husband's trust now trusted herself completely, unequivocally. The woman who had once been thrown away like garbage had learned that she was precious beyond measure, resilient beyond imagining. I walked through the Denver airport, my head held high, my steps confident, and my heart full of gratitude for the arduous, transformative journey that had brought me home to myself. The story that had begun with betrayal and heartbreak had ended with triumph and joy, not because I had gotten my old life back, but because I had built a new one that was infinitely better, infinitely more authentic. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living.